What's up, y'all? So, 12 to 6 elbows. They've been illegal for a long time in mixed martial arts, depending on where you're at. But now they've been passed to where they can be legal. And I'm going to try to stay away from the complicated part of getting things sanctioned in different commissions and everything. So right now, well, let's go back. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I posted on Facebook the day it happened. I'd have to go back and look at the date. But the governing body that which the UFC abides by for the most part has changed the rules and made it where 12 to 6 elbows are no longer illegal. They also changed the rule on a downed opponent. A hand. So prior to this, and it depends on where you're at too, that's why I'm trying to stay away from it. Your states can vary a lot, and you don't really get to understand that unless you get on a regional scene. But on striking of a downed opponent, like a knee to a head or a kick to the head, a hand is no longer something that would rule you as down. For example, which is very similar to the NFL. Like if you're a football fan and they're running and it's like everything but the palm of the hand. So it's kind of the same thing now for MMA. But we're going to stay on these 12 to 6 elbows because I just watched a video on Chael where he was talking about it. And I was like, why didn't I make a video about that? So the 12 to 6 elbows, something Chael brought up is that a lot of us don't even know what they are. And as he described it, I was like, yeah, that's true, because I kind of disagreed with what he was saying. The primary thing with the 12 to 6 elbow is just like, imagine there's a clock right here, and up here is 12, and down here is 6. And it would be you start the strike at 12, and you finish at 6. It would typically be fashioned or seen at in a ground and pound type position. The most infamous moment of this being used and coming into effect is definitely Jon Jones and was it Matt Hamill? Yeah, Matt Hamill. And Jon was in the mount position, and he threw a 12 to 6. I think he might have thrown a couple, and he got DQ'd. Now, what Chael brought up, and something I've also wondered over the years, is like you see them in side control. And they're laying prone, and it's like 12 to 6 on the body when they're laying down, and you see it not get called. I have recently, and it was in the UFC. I don't recall the fight, and it was such a moment of insignificance that it didn't stay with me who the fighters were, but it was definitely UFC, and it's definitely been within the past, I'd say 3 to 6 months. But they're standing and they're up against the cage, and one of the fighter who was pressing the other against the cage does 12 to 6 to his opponent's like trap area. And the ref actually says something. I'm almost positive it was Herb Dean who was reffing that. But and I feel like a lot of us know that the most vocal thing we hear about this is through Joe Rogan, where John McCarthy went on there. This was years ago, way before the Spotify deal and everything. And he talked about how when they were coming up with rules for the UFC to try to give it some sort of ability to be sanctioned and stuff, they had seen like these crazy bodybuilders or whatever who would rip up phone books and stuff, breaking blocks of ice or blocks of woods with their elbows, and it was a 12 to 6. And the people making the rules for the UFC is like, oh, that's way too dangerous. We don't want anyone to actually die. And that's where the rule came from. Speaking of athletes dying, something that Chael said that caught me totally off guard. In Muay Thai, the 12 to 6 elbow isn't illegal. That's something else with these rules. In one, I don't believe it's illegal. In one, they let you do grounded strikes to opponents. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But Chael said something I didn't know. And he said that there have been, he didn't say tons, he said many, multiple, a bunch, something like that, deaths in Muay Thai from people like, so on what I describe as a moment is like two fighters standing there at each other, and like this fighter would jump and do a 12 to 6 elbow to this fighter's top of their head. And I've seen that. I've seen it a lot. I haven't seen it effectively done to the top of the head. I've seen it come down on the shoulders. So I didn't know people were dying from this. And Chael went on to talk about how the top of the head is actually softer than the rest of all this. And it's getting into some stuff I didn't know. I know the back of the head is. I didn't know the top, though. That was interesting. I ended up Googling it, and sure enough, there one agent, call them agency, I don't know what to call it. One source that I found listed stuff from like 1800 and something, and it had over 1,000 deaths in Muay Thai. That's crazy. And to me, that's crazy because a big argument into making MMA legal was actually that it was like safer than boxing at the time because they allowed these boxers to get back up and keep fighting. Kind of like how you're seeing, depends on your age, but I've seen a big change in NFL or just in football in general with CTE. It used to be you get hit, you get rocked, you stumble the sidelines, you're getting called soft if you're not going back in. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a serious injury. That's basically what the sport of boxing is. You know what I'm saying? It's weird how in the NFL, when there's so many eyes on it, we're watching for CTE, and then in boxing, the same thing happens, and then like you decide if you're good at it or not, if you can overcome CTE in a moment. Like, anyways, so it's odd for me to hear that there's actually deaths and that we're adding a rule back that could create these in a way. I don't necessarily think they are because I don't think it's that effective of a strike. But man, it can be deadly in that ground and pound position. Like you can absolutely get some orbitals crushed and everything. But man, I'm still, and just me getting to talking about that, those Muay Thai deaths still has me blown away that can happen. While we're on the topic of the top of the head being soft, if that is the case, then let's talk about this ground. If the top of the head is, and then the grounding strikes are legal like they are in one, not talking about the rule change to where I was mentioning at the beginning of the video, a hand touching the ground, but like in one, they will just knee the head of a downed opponent like crazy, and it's absolutely scary. And I feel like I watched Demetrius Johnson try to counter one by ducking his head and eating him to the top, which as I kind of did that, I'm like, oh gosh, your spine and your neck. It's a hard conversation to have, I guess, and it depends on how you want to look at it. If you want to look at the sport as who truly wins in an all-out fight. Well, if that's the case, then you have to allow weird stuff like groin strikes and eye gouges and fish hooks and all this stuff, which is like what King of the Streets does. And that's freaking vicious, and they're also on concrete. But I don't know. I'm not necessarily against the 12-6 elbows coming legal. I guess out of all this, I'm more interested in, I'm going to have to look up some stuff on the top of the head because I did not know the top of our head is actually soft. I knew the back was, but I just, sometimes it's nice to, or not nice, it's a good idea to have some rules for safety to create sport. So the idea of there not being, or the idea of groin strikes being illegal is because like most men, it just drops you. You know what I'm saying? Which is very similar in physical viewing to being knocked out. So if they were trying to argue the idea of what is really a fight winner or what is effective in a fight, there could be this amazing dick kicker that is out there that would be the best fighter in the world. But we don't really look at it that way. And in every combat sport that's on a main stage, it's illegal. So I don't know. I guess I just wanted to kind of share some thoughts about the 12-6 elbows. Feel free to share your thoughts. I don't see them changing anything with John Jones. lost 10 years ago. It just doesn't work that way. I know that's been a popular little topic as they've done this, but feel free to share your thoughts on what you think, if 12-6 should be back, if it shouldn't be back, if it coming. I say back, like there weren't any illegal rules at the very, very beginning, from my understanding. So I don't know. But yeah, 12-6 elbows, they're going to be legal once all the states. You might run into some states where they're not legal. Is what it is. What are your thoughts? This is Concepts with Kimbler. Let's make that Tootsie roll.